Hello and welcome to Real Professional, the podcast where real professionals have really professional conversations. I'm DreadXP Rock on Tour Jan Solstrom, today joined by Abbey Smith, aka Scruncho. Say hi, Abbey.
Hello.
And by DreadXP Head of Production, Ted Hinchke. Say hi, Ted.
Thank you all for being here today. It's lovely to see you all and hear from you all and all that stuff.
Our guest today is the incomparable Carlos Coronado of Horror Tales, The Wine, and others. Say hi, Carlos.
Hi, thanks for stepping by.
So, I'm really happy to have Abbey on today, and I think it's going to be a good day, so DJ, drop that sick beat. Alright, who wants their gamer safety update?
Me.
Very unsafe lately, so let's get into this.
Okay, so one of our Discord users, and I'll call him out, it's Zach. It's our good friend Zach. He was telling me that he has been drinking GFuel forever for, energy during work. And I thought, this is a dumb thing that I could get in on, because I love dumb video game marketing. So I bought a little tub, they call them tubs, of GFuel. And I started to do some research after I had made this purchase, of course, because that's how you do. And there are a lot of posts on the internet of people like, are you supposed to piss this much? That's pretty much the gist of it. It's like headaches and pissing. I've not had that situation, but I think it's very funny that the two number one things that people report are pissing too much and headaches.
I normally piss about 8 times a day, so what's a lot? What is meant to be too much piss?
I think for normal people, 8 times in a day is too much. Have you been drinking GFuel?
No, but I haven't checked my sugar in 10 years, and I eat a box of donuts a day. So is that a problem?
No, you're good. You're only 31 years old. You're good.
Yeah, you got at least 2 years left of good living.
No, I can't. I've actually heard that the chance for GFuel to give you a headache and make you piss your brains out 12 times a day is directly proportional to how much money they give you for sponsorships.
I'm kind of angling now with I enjoy the GFuel. I know it's such a what would the kids call it? Cringe. They'd say it was cringe that I enjoy some GFuel. But I'm really angling for that sponsorship. So hit me up, GFuel. I'll design a flavor that tastes absolutely awful.
We're actually we're taking a new aggressive sponsorship strategy where we're basically it's mutually assured destruction of sponsorship. So unless you sponsor us, we will continue to give negative health reports on your products. So I actually NordVPN it leaked my nudes. So it's going to continue to have done that until they pay us.
I'll get into GFuel when they make a dill pickle flavor.
They're very close.
Aren't they already? Yeah, aren't they already dill pickle flavored?
They have a Sonic Special Edition chili dog flavor, and there's a big disclaimer at the top of the page that says, warning, this actually tastes like chili dogs, we're sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. I can't imagine, what combination of science, created that, but, can you, okay, have you ever thought about, the things that we've done for flavor science because we're all a bunch of fat pieces of shit? If that was applied towards anything else, we'd have clones. We would be able to time travel. Our ability to we can't cure the common cold, but we could make powder taste like chili dogs. That's amazing. We had to figure out which chemicals not only could we eat safely, but could be combined together to replicate that flavor. I've often thought about this in terms of nuclear power, right? We have the ability to annihilate the planet with nuclear power, like nuclear bombs. Nuclear power is actually probably a better green fuel, but whatever. I don't want to get into that debate. But we also can't fix bones right without making them all kind of crookedy. But we have harnessed the power of an atom so that it can be pushed over the point of fission to blow up an entire country. But we haven't figured out how to like I said, cure the common cold. Well, it's kind of nuts, isn't it? Like the direction our science goes.
The Nobel Prize Committee is currently sipping on chili dog flavored GFuel, shaking their heads and saying, I don't respect it, but it is amazing.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, there's nothing like that. There's nothing that encapsulates the mentality of that, World War II era, that World War I into World War II era, than the culmination being creating a fireball that can consume all life on Earth. But in the modern zeitgeist of that, with our modern capitalist trend, it's to create a powder that tastes like chili dog and makes you piss until you die.
Yeah, this sponsorship plan's working. Carlos, what's your energy drink of choice on those long nights coding?
I actually only drink black coffee. I actually, in the meantime you were talking, I was looking for GFuel on Google, and what the fuck is this? Like, I was expecting like some kind of Red Bull or something like that. But this for the images that I'm getting in Google, like the protein that the people that are very hard to work out in the gym. They eat like this powder protein. This look like that, but for gamers, like straight like that.
Yes, it's pre-workout for gamers.
Pre-workout for gamers. Can you please make a DLC for Horror Tales, the GFuel?
Oh my god!
In the next Horror Tale, I'm going to put a small physics object that you can interact with. That is going to be a bottle of this shit for sure.
I would definitely stick to black coffee. Just saying, stay on the healthy side. I'll see you there, Carlos.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. If it's good, like every time I went to America, coffee, it's like very watery. I like espresso, no sugar, and straight in. Activated for the whole day.
Where in America have you been, though?
I've been in GDC in San Francisco, and I've been to Epic Games in Raleigh, in North Carolina.
Okay, well, Raleigh is not going to have great coffee, but I can't believe you couldn't find good coffee in San Francisco, because they got those, black sludge coffee places. I like that kind of coffee, too. I usually drink really straight espresso or black coffee with no additives or anything. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was because it was inside the GDC, the Games Developers Conference.
Well,
so
yeah,
maybe not the best coffee there. Maybe
no, definitely not. Yeah, I like really, really strong coffee too. But I have to pay a fortune to get it.
He likes her mocha frappuccino with 5 pumps, whatever. I remember you're like, the order you had.
I did not have a frappuccino. I had 5 shots of espresso with a specific kind. Yes, I did. Every single time I get 5 shots of espresso. And then I add some sort of usually it's in an Americano form because it saves me money. And then I get some sort of pump, like a pump of white mocha in there. To give it some thickness.
Used to work at a Starbucks. So you got a very specific drink order.
Yeah, I know all the hacks.
Coffee, it was very specific. She had to text it to me. She was like, I don't trust you to remember this.
Even the Starbucks people mess it up because it's very specific. But since I did work at Starbucks, I know all the little hacks and exactly what I like. So it's nice you can just plug it into the app. But when I go to other coffee places, it's a little harder to actually get something that's strong enough for me without paying a fortune.
Kind of I'll do 5-shot decaf iced Americano with 3 pump of dark caramel and heavy cream. I found the text, Abby, after 17 images of you sending me memes of you looking disapprovingly.
There you go. Yeah, occasionally I'll spoil myself and get the dark caramel, but usually it's the white mocha.
Okay, sorry, we've derailed the conversation enough, Abby. Jesus.
You talk about coffee and I get all excited. And then we talk about GFuel and I'm like, not as exciting.
So, Abby, Ted, did either of you play Horror Tales the One? I reviewed it. I mean, I did my due diligence.
I have, yes. I have played Horror Tales the One.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk about that game. Just can we just for a second talk about how pretty that game is? sometimes I would just get caught like looking at the surrounding like areas and I'd forget I was playing a game. It just looks so pretty.
Well, thank you. Actually, that's totally done on purpose because I think making a pretty and beautiful and colorful horror game is the best provocation to the player that you can actually do, because you're aware you're playing a horror game, but at the same time it's beautiful, and your mind is like, okay, it's gone, it's beautiful, we're fine, but you know you are not fine. And I am kind of sick of horror games taking place, in a haunted mansion or a broken, forgotten hospital, and it's like there can be beauty in horror, if you ask me. And my last game, Infernium, a lot of the comments are also the same, like, hey, this is a very beautiful, it's not exactly horror, but it's a very beautiful horror game for its genre. So yeah, I'm very happy you found it beautiful, and the next horror game is going to be equally or even more beautiful, or at least I'll try it to be.
That your favorite thing about it is that it does that mix of color, right? Like you're so tired of horror games being just like the same, either the same filter that we're all used to by now, or the same kind of palette of like sepia tone blah,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and it's super true though, because it's like sometimes certain games will have cool mechanics or like puzzles or something, but they're instantly just not as exciting for me when it is taking place in those common horror themes, like the house or the hospital. So, I mean, your game was definitely it was a good big breath of fresh air.
This is I am actually about to cry by hearing you say those things, because I also teach in the University of Barcelona, and one thing I always say to my students is, use the local shit we have here. I don't mind if it's shit from Europe, from Spain, from Catalonia, for your tone, but we try to imitate American culture, and there's nothing wrong with American culture, but it's not surprising anymore. Everyone has seen those settings, and if we have something here that we can, like, for example, the whole mood of the hotels, the wine, it's based on a Mediterranean island. And why not? Why can't there be horror in a Mediterranean island? It's not about the setting. It's about how it is presented to you, and I hope it's memorable because of this. In the game, you also explore a broken mansion, and it's actually a traditional Catalan masia, and some things that are more similar to other settings in the horror genre. But I think it's like, if we open, like, for example, I would love a horror game that is set in African or tribal African culture, something similar that what Marvel did with Black Panther, this kind of architecture and setting. I think that would be so transgressive, and it could work very, very well, because all the stories about witchcrafts that are set in Africa, those are amazing. And I don't think there's a single person in this world that would say, no, I only buy horror games that are set in dark American ruined hospitals. So I think there's a lot of ground to expand the genre here.
I think that's an excellent approach that a lot of developers need to take these days, and that is, horror can happen anywhere. It's a universal thing. It is not strictly an American export. We don't send I prefer if we didn't send our horror to other countries. It's like, here's your spooky VHS filter hospital with PS1 graphics. Here you go. Here's your American horror. I remember the first time I saw the wine sea, I had to stop and I was like, holy shit. Like, we're really just doing this, huh? It's, Horror Tales the Wine it's beautiful, and you're a solo dev, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't do everything these days. I don't hire people, but I use a lot of assets from the marketplace, from the Unreal marketplace, and they help a lot, because I can focus the hours of development in what is really important, which is the design itself, the jump scares, the design of the environment. And for example, like nowadays, I don't have to model and texture like 20 rocks. And the game still has personality. But a lot of the props are bought and taking good care, and I do a lot of modifications kind of to fit the aesthetics that I wanted to go with the wine. But yeah, essentially all the game is done by me, yes.
It's so crazy.
See, I think that we need to get away from, some people would say, oh, it's an asset flip. I think there's a huge difference between utilizing the assets sold to developers and making an asset flip. I wouldn't call what you make an asset flip in any sense of the word.
Mm-mm.
But people have gotten so obsessed with looking at these pre-bought assets and saying, oh, they didn't do the work. And I think you are doing the work. I just don't think that devs should be pigeonholed like that.
Well, being a dev, you are always exposed to negative reviews and people that only want to burn your game. Being an indie game with, like 100 reviews on Steam especially. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, like, do you want a game like every box is custom? I'm going to lose a lot of hours doing that instead of doing the things that can make the game great. And I understand that an asset flip game, if you look at it, it's something kind of a Frankenstein, because this is what happens when you buy a lot of assets from the marketplace and you don't treat them or modify them. You end up with something Frankenstein, because maybe those assets has a more cartoonish look, maybe those other assets are more realistic, etc., etc. And you see like it's like a mix of a bunch of styles that they don't quite mix. And but yeah, I think it's pointless. Like 10 years ago, I was told that I didn't do video games because I used Unreal Engine, and if you want to make a real game, you have to do your own game engine. That was 10 years ago, and nowadays it's like no, you are not making games if you are using assets. You have to you do everything custom. It's just the industry going forward. But even Valve, I remember that people complained for the first Left 4 Dead because it has the same boxes as Half-Life 2. And it's like, what the fuck? Who cares? They're boxes. They are not the main protagonist. They didn't flip Gordon Freeman.
They should have just made the boxes Gordon Freeman.
I agree. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. But I think you're right that we are just like getting further in this development of making games in general. And I used to be like one of those people that was super like resistant about pre-made assets. But realistically, it's like you give two people a pencil, they're going to do the same pencil, they're going to do two different things with it, and it's really about what you do with them and like how you use them. And so I think it's at this point it's incredibly foolish to hate on someone's game because they're using assets off of some sort of marketplace, when in reality, like, we need to actually just take the game as it is as a whole. If I play your game and I look at your rock and I hate your game simply because it's a rock that you bought off the marketplace, you gotta wonder what's really the issue here. But you're right, it's so silly to look down upon someone's creation or project simply because they use some sort of asset off of the marketplace.
I would say I think it's all based. It depends on the expectation. Like, if you are making a game, like, look at the rock simulator, yeah, maybe use custom rocks, Mm-hmm. But it's a horror game, and I like the analogy. Like, the game engine is the pan, the assets are the ingredients, and the game is the recipe. So you can have the same pan, you can have the same ingredients, and you are going to get different results, because the cooking skills is of course you have to have good ingredients, but the cooking skills, it's what really matters. And with the assets, it's the same. You see them like the raw product, and how you treat them is like very, 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 very important, even more than the asset themselves.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but I feel like a lot of people that get criticized for using like popular assets are also people who are just trying to learn how to make games. So like you have these people that are making games with common assets on the marketplace, and they're highly criticized for them when in reality they're just trying to learn how to make games. I mean, if you go down the itch page and you play like any handful of like 10 to 15 horror games, you'll likely run into games with, assets that you've seen before. But again, like people are just trying to learn. People are trying to, focus on the things that really matter to them. So it's like one of those crazy things that people debate about all the time.
Well, I think that the interesting thing about this whole conversation is something that I don't think a lot of people address, which is that, a lot of times it used to be the case that when you were learning a game, you were learning how to make games, you were learning in like mods, like you were modding Half-Life, or you were modding.
That's exactly how I started.
Yeah, no, that's how a lot of people started. I mean, we just reviewed In Sound Mind, which is made by Recreate Stuff, which started as a modder for. They did a horror mod called Nightmare House. And Nightmare House 2 is like still, I think, a really, really great horror game, and it was a mod for Half-Life 2. And but the thing is back then, like, there wasn't a way to do paid mods. And the indie, like, major games were developed by a team of like, 20 to 30 people, right? Like, you didn't have these mega games with, I think that the total number of people that CD Projekt Red employs is like 1,077. And the amount of people that worked on Cyberpunk is probably like a good 800 of them, like and I'm not exaggerating with that. Like there's a lot of people that work on these big games now. And what we've seen is we've kind of talked about the reclassification of like AAA versus AA versus single A, but like, the time where Braid, where it came out and it was made by, let's like a handful of people, or Super Meat Boy, those games today would have to be made by a group of, 15 to 20 people. And it's been a part of the trend of the overall raising of the floor for making games, where it's really hard to be a solo developer nowadays. Like it's significantly harder to be a solo developer nowadays and be successful, even with all the new tools, than it was, even 8 to 10 years ago. And one of the big issues also is that where is the creative space now for people to just learn how to make games? And you have these toolkits like Roblox or PlayStation Dreams, but Roblox, it basically like requires you to monetize from the get-go. There is no creative free space to just try to kind of learn. You're always being jumped into competition with people that are in it to make money. Even if you come out on something like itch.io, which is much more kind of a free space to create, your competition is people that are doing it for money. You don't have that arena anymore where people can just learn to create without that economic incentive even existing in that market. I mean, when they were creating Dota, like, he wasn't doing it to try to make money. He was just making a map in Warcraft 3, and the money came later. And it's interesting because what a lot of the criticism that we see now for these asset flip things, not even asset flip things, but free games, the people that go and give a negative review to free games are evil. But, and that's the thing, is that, like, where is someone supposed to go to do those I'm just learning games? And it doesn't really exist. And that's a symptom of the overall kind of, and part of the raising of the floor of the cost of indie game development. I know that was a long point, but I hope it made sense.
It makes total sense. Actually, my first release project was Barcelona. It was a modded campaign for Left 4 Dead 2, and it is still nowadays my most successful product with I think it's 4 million downloads. It is crazy, but it's a mod and it's amazing because I wanted to do environment and I got this game and then I make the environments. I don't have to do everything, the artificial intelligence, the whatever, right? So we've lost that because even like with the release of Back 4 More, it doesn't have modding, or I don't know if it's been a long time since we get like a major game with modding. And what happens is that people say, okay, no modding, I will make my own game, my small game, but I'll do it all myself. And then you cannot specialize in the area you like. Because modding is amazing, because you have the assets of a game and just buy something new with it. The Lego pieces are there, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I agree with you that people that give a bad review to free games are like, they don't know the effort behind like everything in a game. Like even the most little thing takes a lot of time to make and to make good. So yeah, evil people.
Yeah, I mean, the only game I can think of that had modding tools. Well, there's some that have modding tools, but like, robust modding tools was the Warcraft 3 Reforged, but they fucked themselves right in the foot with that one. I invented a new phrase: "fucked themselves in the foot," by making it so that they owned all the mods on the platform. I mean, it just killed any incentive that people had to make mods. It's like, oh, if we want to exploit this mod and make people pay for it and turn it into a full game, it's ours. And it's like, that's so against the spirit of modding, And the only reason they did that is because Dota came from Warcraft, so.
And it's also the fault of Unreal Engine and Unity, because, okay, I want to do game development, and I'm starting, and I'm like, I can do Dreams, I can learn Dreams, I can learn whatever, or I can actually learn Unity or Unreal Engine and eventually earn money with that. And it's very juicy because the tools are very approachable, they are free, everyone can use them, and it's amazing that we can use the same tool that Fortnite is built on with the same features, like exactly, and that's something huge that is happening in the industry right now. And then we have to go to the other side of that, which is like, I actually like that people don't know that I'm a solo developer. Like I got a lot of reviews, and they're like, "Hey, congratulations to the team," because I think that when you're judging a paid game, you are actually it doesn't matter the size of the team, it doesn't matter, but because you're getting a product. But I think it's really unfair. Like I have a lot of reviews comparing How to Taste the Wine with Resident Evil, and it's like, okay, do you know that Resident Evil costs like 70 euros? My game costs like 12 euros. Like, what the fuck are you doing? It's obviously it's going to be worse, but it's like a fraction of the price. Why are you comparing? It's different products. Like, I'm not even trying to compete with Resident Evil. Why are you doing that? And I think that's very, very unfair with indie games. And the other thing that a lot of people complain about the wine was that some people don't like horror, but they don't like the sections where the sections in the wine where you have to solve puzzles, and the puzzles are easy, but there's someone chasing you, so you become like nervous and anxiety goes through the roof and that. And I guess people just want the jump scare. They don't want the pressure and the constant pressure. And I think it's a shame, because I think that's one of the selling points of the wine, that there's not that many games that do horror and puzzles at the same time. Usually all the horror games, they are like this, the horror section and the puzzle section, the horror section and the puzzle section. And I think that, like, I'm going to keep doing that for my next games, but I don't know, I feel like if there's something new, maybe you don't like it, but you say, hey, it's not for me, but I appreciate it because it's something new. And this is the current state of the indie industry. Like, it's not only in horror games, but we're living in interesting times, because people have gotten like adapted to what a indie horror game or indie game is. And sometimes you're afraid of doing innovation while being an indie, and that's kind of scary, because that's why you're an indie, right? And I think I just went totally off topic. But
no, it's great.
Well, considering the survival horror aspect that you say some people don't like, if I'm not mistaken, it is tagged as survival horror on Steam. So, just saying.
It's one of those things. I really loved those sections in the wine
Me too.
where you've got this headless bastard chasing you around and you're trying to solve a puzzle. I did, after about an hour, combined on puzzles, it went from being really tense to where I had to try to like chill myself out about it. And I do like that it just makes like a slapping sound whenever it catches you. Yeah. So it's like, I just get slapped down if I don't solve this puzzle correctly. But I really liked that aspect of it. I can see where people would say, I don't like doing this. I just want something to jump out in my face, but not actually be a threat. And I think that comes down to horror being so subjective. Everybody has a different idea of what's scary. But I feel like it'd be a pretty universal feeling trying to solve a puzzle while a corpse is trying to slap you to death. But I guess I'm wrong there. But I think it's amazingly well done.
Maybe
thank you.
They viewed the title as a call to action. Get it? Wine. They're whining about the game.
It's like in my humble opinion, like it's okay if you don't like the kind of horror that the wine that the game itself proposes. It's totally okay. It's very subjective horror. I think that this industry in general is missing like, okay, this is not for me, but I think it's good. You can not love something and still think it's good. It happens a lot with me. I don't like, for example, I don't like Big Bang Theory, but I understand why it's a masterpiece and so many people love it. And because I don't love it,
I cannot understand why it's a masterpiece. Apologies for the Big Bang Theory. I find offensive. But anyways, keep going.
No, but you get the point. You know, there's some products that are like, a lot of people love them, you don't love them, and it's like, okay, like, totally cool with them. But yeah, it happened with the wine too. It happened with my last game in Fair. It happened with every game I released it, that they are very polarizing, and I think it's something good, because what I don't want to make is something, you know, like neutral or something that doesn't shake you from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, I would say like Animal Crossing is something that I completely understand why people love it. It's just not my thing, you know?
I mean, I'm like that with Final Fantasy, where like I have like zero desire to get involved with Final Fantasy, but I understand why people like it. But I'm not going to go out of my way to write a bad review for Final Fantasy just because I personally don't like it, but I understand why people do. So like there definitely is like a difference. And you know, I actually read some of the reviews for Horror Tales the Wine, and some people are like, I can see why people like it and I appreciate it, but it's just not for me. And then they gave it a bad review, but it's like, well, if you understand why people appreciate it, it's not like a bad game. You know what I mean? It's just like not your flavor.
Especially because when you review a game in the Steam, you're making a recommendation.
Exactly. The thing with Steam reviews is I don't think your average Steam user realizes just how impactful those could be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They use it as kind of a throwaway thing. Like you might like a game, but you think that the voice acting's kind of wooden, so you leave a bad review, and you know, maybe years later you have to work with that person.
Yep, it's true.
Actually, you want to hear a good one about this subject?
Yes.
So 1 month after the release of the wine, I made something called like the community translation, which is essentially I gave the Google spreadsheets for the localization. And if someone is willing to spend the time to localize the game in their language, because there are some languages that they are just not worth it for me to localize them, because the cost of them wouldn't make up the sales on those countries. And so far it has been very good. And one of the languages a user made is Korean, and it was made by Mac, a Steam user. I was very grateful. I updated the game with the Korean language. I put I put the name of the username, of course, in the credit, everything. And 1 week later, he put a positive Steam review in Korean. I was like, okay, fantastic. Like the localizer, the user who did the translation, loved the game so much that he actually localized it and leave a good Steam review. Fantastic. But then a week ago, I realized like he changed the review from positive to negative, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like this person took the time to translate like I think it's 6,000 lines. Words. Sorry. It's like what happened? Like the game didn't change. Like what happened? And I used the Google Translate to look to see what he put in the review, and that was getting something weird. And then I talked to him like, hey, I saw that you changed the review from positive to negative. What is that? And he's like, oh no. The game is fantastic. Like it's a very, very good horror game, but there was this part here where I didn't enjoy the level design. And that's why I changed it, because I wanted to warn people about that. It was a very little part of the third level of the game. And I'm like, and I explained it to him like, okay, but you changing this review actually lowered the score of the game from 91 to 88. And the recent reviews went from 78 to like 69. And it's when Steam put the review in red or whatever, the total score number. And he then, but only then he realized like that he was not helping neither the game or me or the community. And I told him it's totally okay with me if you want to put a negative Steam review, but it is actually impacting the algorithm of Steam, and the wishlists are going down, etc., etc. And it's exactly that. Like people don't realize how much impactful reviews are for small games. It's like, of course, a review in a game that has like thousands of reviews per month, it's not going to be impactful. But in a little game like Horror Tales: The Wine, it's like every negative review is like someone shooting you to the face or kicking your balls. And even the person who loved the game so much that essentially made a feed translation from English to Korean, changed the review to negative. It's like, what the fuck is going on? Like I didn't understand it.
It's such a crazy roller coaster, though, isn't it? Like dealing with reviews, it's insane. And like Jan said, people who review games and don't actually develop them aren't a part of being around game developers in general. They don't realize how impactful it is. And what people also don't realize is that they're discouraging people from making games. Like your first or your second or even your third game, it's not going to be like perfect. It's not going to be completely polished.
And it's totally okay.
Yeah, it's you're learning. And something that bothers me a lot is that people are like, oh, so we just don't get an opinion. We don't get to we live in a world where we can't say our opinion or say something bad. But that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that you don't need to leave a negative review over one thing you didn't like in a game, especially in the indie community, because again, people are growing, people are learning, and I get that you pay money for it, but I look at paying for indie games as an investment. These are also some of the same people that are like, AAA and, AA horror, it's just not really, it's not keeping up. They're not putting out enough. It's not good enough. But like, these are your future developers who are going to be making like bigger games. And it's just unfortunate, especially when you hear of like talented devs that are no longer wanting to make games because the community is just, it can be so toxic sometimes.
I think you made a good point there, Abby.
Yeah.
You were saying, you're talking about the AAA and the AA, and people are saying it's just not fast enough. And then they turn to indies and they go, oh, they put out games fairly quick, and they go, and they have to say, go faster, go faster, go faster. Stuff comes out. I didn't like this one aspect of it. Bad reviews. How is that supposed to encourage indie devs to continue working?
Exactly. And it's not like you're making a bunch of money off of making indie games. Like nobody over here is making bank off of like their one indie game. And if they are, it's a rarity.
It's
I was just gonna say it's a real issue, and I don't know how they should fix that Steam wise. Because someone can play there. It's required that you get 10 minutes in a game before you can review it, and if there's just one thing in there that someone doesn't like and they give it a negative review, I've learned from whenever I first started doing reviews on Steam to now writing reviews for a company and everything in between. The small things, let that which truly does not matter slide. There's some things I don't like in a lot of games. There were things in the wine that I didn't like, but it wouldn't affect my overall view of the game. They need to take it as a whole, not as a bunch of small parts. One broken part is, detrimental to the entire game. I don't think that's the way to go about it. You have to look at the whole experience. It's like going and seeing a movie and then leaving a bad review because Chris Hemsworth had his shirt on in one scene whenever you thought it should really be off. That kind of thing.
Which is definitely why Jans leaves bad reviews on games. I've seen it myself.
Oh my god, I did it to... Okay, yeah, Carlos, for context on this, way back whenever I first started getting into indie horror, I got a copy of a game that Scruncho was the voice actress for. And in my review, I dinged it for some rough voice acting, and I gave the game a bad review because of that. And now here we are years later.
Busted.
Yeah, and this came out during like one of our community movie nights, and I was like, oh shit, it's actually that person.
Dude, I have an even better one. It's when I first started doing, not first started, but I was doing reviews a time and time ago, and I had a column called Bottom of the Bargain Bin, where I talked shit about bad games on Steam that were like $1 or free. I mean, I was that guy. I was the bad guy. And one of the games I talked shit about was a game called Finger Bones, which, as you may know, is a game created by David Szymanski, who made Dusk, and who has worked with us on 3 different collections now, and is one of my very good friends. But that review actually got pulled from my site for being too mean. And, like, he didn't know that I was the guy that wrote that until, like, after we were done with the second game. And he was like, that was you? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, damn. And it was, like, pretty funny. But, yeah, I was able, like, I have worked very, 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 very hard on kind of pulling away from that kind of dark past. But even so, like, it'll come back and bite you in the ass sometimes, because the world is not as big as you think.
It's true. And when I read Jans' review, I think he was the first review on our game, and it was the first game that I like got into. So it was like one of my first games too, and like, I remember just being so devastated that I was like, is this even worth it? I was so upset. I was really upset. And eventually I was just like...
You cried.
I didn't even know Ted. This was years ago. But yeah, I was like, I had a hard time. I sat in my closet and I cried. Yeah, that's the truth. Because I was so... like, I was just going through a rough time, and like that's hence why like there's some rough parts, but like it was very discouraging. And I can see how like a review like that can absolutely destroy anyone's like focus on game development, because it is like a hard time. I mean, obviously I'm still here, and I was just like, well, whatever, screw this guy, he can suck my toe or whatever. And Jans and I are friends now, and we're cool, and we're both in better places since then. But it was just I can see why like reviews just absolutely destroy people sometimes.
I'm just out here fucking up lives. I use an alias whenever I want to write bad things. I'm just kidding. No, I've fully embodied the mindset of DreadXP, which is positively spooky. I used to look at games with an eye on criticism. What did they do wrong? What can I tag them for? It was fun. But then you realize that these are people, and I started meeting more and more devs, and I started talking with more and more devs, and they're people. They're people just like everyone else, and they all have hopes and dreams and things they're trying to accomplish. And shitting on that because you didn't like that you clipped through a wall wrong on one level isn't a reason to tear down their entire, like, dream. So now I embody the DreadXP positively spooky. I'm looking for what's good in a game. I no longer look for what's bad, unless it's so in my face that I can't ignore it, which is very rare for a game. But I just try to find the good in everything now. And I think that's a much better way to do it. with game criticism moving forward for everyone, critics and people on Steam alike. You should look for the positives instead of the negatives.
And I think in this way of playing games, you're going to enjoy them more.
I have found that I do, in fact, enjoy games a lot more. I play more than I used to, and I thought I used to play a lot, but nowadays, I'll go through 3 or 4 games over the course of a week and, talk to other people about them, and it's just more fun now.
In my long career as a journalist and as a, et cetera, I think that I've never met someone who does negative reviews, like predominantly negative reviews, that is like a happy person, Yeah. Like they're always like, like even the ones that like make a good career out of it, like they're usually also feeling trapped by their audience. Like they're like, I can only do negative reviews because it's the only things my fans want. And I think that's really, really rough because, and I feel for that too, because like I do feel like oftentimes people are kind of like trapped within the demographic that they create for themselves. Like and here's the thing, like I use this example way too often, but I'm gonna use it again, is like Angry Joe isn't Angry Joe anymore. Like he's not the angry reviewer he was before, but his name is still Angry Joe. His channel is still Angry Joe. Everyone still remembers him as Angry Joe, and his reviews haven't grown since he was Angry Joe. People are expecting him to be Angry Joe. And like the thing is that it becomes like really, really attractive to chase the easy rage clicks. Because even on our games, and our games are pretty well reviewed. All the DreadXP games are pretty well reviewed. The negative reviews tend to get more interactivity than the positive ones. Because the people that are going to try to interact with that content are going to interact with the negative content. We're just wired that way, But the thing is like you kind of have to overcome that impulse, because if you don't, you're going to kind of be trapped in your own kind of realm of negativity. And it's hard to get out of that. And it's extra hard once you realize that like when you are out of that, you need to find a new group. But we're here, we exist. The positive communities exist, definitely, for sure.
When you were saying that, I swear to God, I was thinking in Angry Joe. I was thinking in him, and I don't know I think it's something that comes with the age. When you're a teenager or you're very young, you tend to enjoy more the negative review because they are more harsh, they are more entertaining. Now I just want to chill, and for example, from Angry Joe, the reviews I really enjoy are the ones that he actually likes the product, and you see him happy and enjoying and talking like he means it. Because I don't know, I think it's more wholesome content, if you can ever say Angry Joe content is wholesome. But I don't know if it's my bad English or whatever, but it's something that you start to appreciate with the age. And I do think, and maybe this is a bit controversial, but I do think that in the horror or survival horror games, the indie games are way, way ahead in terms of creativity and in terms of making things new than the AAA community. Like for me, and people will hate me for that, but Resident Evil 8 was so disappointing, and it's like, for me, horror, it has to be personal, and for horror to be personal, it has to be indie, like, because you cannot make horror where you are doing like Call of Duty mechanics. It doesn't work. And even the director of Resident Evil 8 said that, like, hey, we're actually tuning down the horror and the scary sections because we want more people to play the game. Because people in Resident Evil 7, they thought it was too scary. And I'm like, do you know what your audience is? Do you know why people buy Resident Evil? It's like, but it's market that they need to sell a certain amount of copies. And if the game is too scary, they just won't sell these copies. And it's a shame. I understand the decision, but it's a shame.
I was going to say I completely understand that point of view. AAA and I've made this statement many times before on my Twitter where I live, that AAA doesn't hold a candle to indie these days whenever it comes to horror. I mean, yeah, you can go back to the Dead Space well, and you can bring a remake out that people will definitely clamor for, but at the same time, it's just Dead Space again. You don't often see indies going back years later and redoing their game. Just, it almost seems cynical in a way. Instead of thinking of something new, they go, what do people want, and what have they been asking for? A new Dead Space? We could just remake the first one. We're good. Yeah, I think indie is way ahead of AAA right now.
Actually, can I spoil a very, very little thing of Resident Evil 8? It's from the first section, and it's not consequential. Can I do that?
Mm-hmm.
So when you meet Lady D, then eventually you are getting good with the game, you are getting access to weapons, to healing, to whatever, and then he cuts your fucking hand. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing, because now the game is like, I was becoming very powerful, and now I have no hand. Like, this is going to be great, because, like, a lot of things are going to happen, and I will not be able to defend myself, and now it's going to be very tense and very horrific, and I'm going to miss my weapons, and this is a very good design. Shit, like 10 seconds later, the character grabs Ethan, not in the other one, I don't remember the name of the protagonist, grabs his own hand, and with a fucking liquid, he glues it back like 20 seconds later. And it's like, why are you making the animations and all the work that it takes to make the hand go juju if 20 seconds later it's going to be non-consequential? And this is not something you make because of, fireworks. Like, at some point in the development of Resident Evil 8, there was a mechanic and an area of the game that you have to play with no hand, for sure. Like, I'm 100% sure, and that got good of the game. Maybe it was too scary, maybe whatever, but, like, this is a clear example of, like, for me, like AAA or horror doesn't do the extra mile. And it's a shame, because it would have worked so well. Like, now you play without a hand, you're totally defenseless. But like, that's something like nowadays I can imagine happening in the horror game, but not in a AAA game.
Really good point.
Yeah, I could see. Oh, go ahead, Ted.
No, I was gonna say, I think that's a really good point. Like, I think that with Resident Evil 8, you're not going to see something that's that bold. But with something like Dan Mullins' new game Inscription, it's not exactly what you're talking about. But, I don't think I'm going to spoil anything by saying, like, 80% of that game is hidden behind that first area. All of the promotional materials for that game are the first area. And it is maybe 20% of the game. And it goes in a completely different direction after that, like in ways you do not expect. And that is so bold and so cool. And, as a bit of background, I was talking to Dan about his plans for the game before, all this stuff had happened. And he was talking about how it was so important for him that any company that he signed with, which he signed with Devolver, would let him do the marketing his way, because he did not want to reveal like all this stuff about the game, which is a really bold decision. And I mean, that's something you're only going to see in indie.
It's also the only space where, for the most part, you can do that. If you sign with bigger publishers, they definitely want like more control of how things are received and how they're presented, kind of thing. So, I mean, it's really is an indie dominated kind of thing.
And it can stay that way if everyone will stop being so mean to indie developers.
Well, if people continue to be mean to indie developers, there's just not going to be a lot left,
They will take their ball and go home. That's always an option. But Carlos, what do you have coming up?
I'm actually working on the second part of the Horror Tales saga, which is Horror Tales the Beggar. Actually, like this week, I've been prototyping the enemy artificial intelligence, and you will fight a pack of wolves in this game. And it's very gruesome because, they are animals, and when you can defend yourself this time, and when you hit them, you're supposed to feel bad because they do these little noises, and they are actually not, well, so the next game in the Horror Tale saga is going to be the experimental one. The Wine was the classic survival horror one, and the better is going to be like very experimental. And one thing I want to achieve with this game is the player to feel bad with himself and be scared of himself more than the enemies and the environment, and everything is going to circle around that concept.
That's amazing. Well, our hour is coming to a close. Carlos, where can the people find you?
Oh, Twitter.
Just on Twitter. Do you have a name you use, or
it's Carlos Game Dev. Everything like with no spaces or whatever.
All right. And Abbey, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter, Scruncho G. You can find me pretty much everywhere. I'm on Discord as well, doing my own stuff and Dread stuff. So if you can't find me, I'd be concerned for you.
If you can't find Abbey, just ask Ted. Ted, where can we find you on the internet?
Henschke, at Dread Henschke, but I'm mostly just at DreadXP. Just go follow DreadXP _.
And I can be found at Horror Played, but more than likely at DreadXP _. DreadXP is also on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, WeChat, Kick, OnlyFans, Grindr, Bumble,
Pornhub.
We're on every single social media platform posting awesome gameplay videos. Realistically, we're actually on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And you can follow us all of the services at DreadXP Games, on Twitter at DreadXP _.
And it won't get you off, but it's entertaining.
And I want to thank Carlos for coming in and talking to us. I was very excited for this talk because I really enjoyed The Wine, and I'm excited to see The Beggar and what's after that, The Astronaut?
The Astronaut, exactly. And thank you for inviting me, and sorry for my bad English. It's not my mother language, but
your English wasn't
too bad.
Yeah.
No, you were fine. Like it was completely comprehensible, and not only that, but insightful. You were fine, dude. We've had people that like speak English as a first language that were worse guests in English, so don't even worry about it.
Yeah, realistically. But bye everyone.
Bye.
Get out of here.
Bye. Bye.